You've done all of the research, all of the work, everything that I've told you to do for all of these years of doing this podcast, you have installed in your own personal auto policy. But now you're traveling somewhere in somebody else's vehicle and you're wondering, should I be paranoid about their insurance? What's going to happen if we get in an accident? Find out today on Monday Morning Lawyer. Good morning, everybody. It's your accident and injury guy, Joe with Bowers, here in my Elkton office. And a few things may be changing soon. Number one, we are going to bump the time back starting next week of this podcast to 11 a.m. Still on Mondays, but we're moving it back to 11 a.m. starting next week. That is December 15th. And additionally, but not right away, not as quick, that time change will be next week, and it will probably stick at 11. We also, you may start seeing some different background behind us because a new podcast studio is going to be opening early next year right here in Elkton. So when you see a different background, nothing weird's going on. We're just doing the show from a professional podcast studio that is opening in downtown Elkton early next year. So more information will follow on that because it might, who knows, maybe somebody out there watching this wants to start podcasting and they're here in Elkton. Would be a great resource, and it's turnkey and ready to go. So this week, though, what we're going to talk about is that insurance policy that you have listened to me, you have talked to experts, you have done your own research, you've gotten all of this information about how to make your insurance policy the ultimate sword and shield to protect you should you get in an accident. But now you're going on a trip or somebody else is driving you somewhere and you're concerned because you've watched all these episodes and you've realized that you don't get to pick who causes an accident. You don't get to pick who they're insured by or if they're insured at all. And of course, you don't get to pick what insurance coverage they have. And just the same as that applies to every driver out there on the road that could potentially cause an accident, you're a guest in somebody else's vehicle, just a passenger minding your own business, and an accident happens, and now it's like, wait. The attorney guy on his Monday morning podcast talk about how my insurance will protect me if I'm in an accident and somebody has insufficient insurance who hits me. But what if I'm in somebody else's vehicle? Isn't that policy the next step? And if they have insufficient insurance, did I do all of that for nothing? And the answer to that question very simply is no. You didn't do all of that for nothing. There are many elements of your insurance policy that are kind of magical, if I'm going to be completely honest with describing it. And they follow you. Anything on that policy that has to do with protecting you as an individual and your physical self, any injuries to you will follow you. And why do I make that distinction? Because if you have a special exemption for property damage, where because you've purchased this OEM rider, your insurance company would have to repair your vehicle using original manufacturer parts. That part does not. You can't just go sit in somebody else's vehicle and they get in an accident and be like, we're going to use my insurance. No, that's not how that works. But when it comes to injury elements, limits of injury, personal injury protection coverage, this is a big one, personal injury protection coverage, even your uninsured motorist coverage could potentially come into play. However, first in line, when it comes to first party coverages, the stuff in the vehicle that you're in that applies to you is the vehicle that you're actually in. So first in line, let's talk about that PIP coverage because that's what's going to pay your wages. That's what's going to offset medical bills. If you hire my office, we're going to want to be very, very involved in that process, even though we don't charge a fee to handle your PIP insurance. If we handle it for you and we handle it from day one and we can control the order of operations, it's a really great analogy that applies here. You've seen those little meme math problems, and then there's like 50 different answers that people give because they're not solving the problem in the proper order of operations. We're not going to have a math lesson here, but understand that when it comes to the application of insurance coverage and payments in an accident, there is a similar order of operations that our office will employ to maximize the money in your pocket. More on that another day. In fact, that's probably going to be great for next week's episode as we talk about ways to put more money in your pocket if you're injured in somebody else's accident. But we're talking about PIP coverage. We're talking about you being a guest in somebody else's vehicle. Accident happens. The primary PIP insurance is the vehicle that you're in. However, we're going to bring it full circle to why you pay money when you waive PIP coverage. Assume that you have the maximum PIP on your own personal policy. That vehicle is not part of the accident. It's not the yellow. It's not the green. Your car's red, let's say. Okay? So you're a passenger in the green car who gets hit by the yellow car. We're going to use that as our example here. And you own the red car that's not part of the accident, and you've listened to Bowers and everything he says to do about your policy. So you get hit. The green car has waived PIP because your friend, you didn't tell him to watch this podcast. By the way, you should. They've waived PIP for everybody in their household in that vehicle. But they haven't waived PIP for you. So that policy has to pay you, if you're injured, the minimum $2,500 in PIP. But we said that we listened to Bowers, and in our red car over here, not part of this accident, so off the screen, I have $10,000 in PIP. Now what? Well, this is really great because after we've exhausted the green car's PIP, the $2,500, even though they waived it, because I didn't in my red car, the green company has to give me the minimum Maryland PIP of $2,500. Then when they've exhausted the PIP and sent me a letter saying, hey, the limit's $2,500, you've got it all, I can take that to the red car and their policy and say, hey, I have more bills here, turn on the spigot, and they will send money up to $7,500 more. So $10,000 total. You will get the full benefit, even though it may split between two companies, of your PIP insurance policy. You don't lose it just because you're in another vehicle. And all of those things that we told you before, where I broke down the statute that clearly indicates that they cannot raise your rates or drop you or take away a discount or any other number of enumerated things. They basically cannot touch your policy or your premiums just for making a PIP claim. This is the ultimate example of just making a PIP claim because you're making an excess PIP claim. It is your money. You get it, assuming that you've accumulated enough bills to offset it. So that's the thing. If you have $10K in PIP and you only have $5,000 in meds and wages, the PIP's only paying out that $5K. It's not just a blank check. Here's $10K. Good luck. It doesn't work that way. You have to actually have bills that match it. So the best case scenario is that you don't max it out, because then it means you weren't hurt that bad. Of course, that's what we wish for everybody, not always the reality. Other parts of your policy, the uninsured, underinsured motorist, the stacking enhanced UIM that we talked about a few weeks ago, also going to follow you in most instances. Here's how it works. Let's talk about very briefly that uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage. The at-fault vehicle, the yellow guy down here, has a Maryland minimum $30,000 policy. And let's say you're hurt bad enough that the case is worth that. We're not going to get into the gory details. We're just going to assume that the case is worth more, that this guy's 30 grand. He says, whoop, I owe the 30 grand. Now we move on to the uninsured, underinsured motorist of the green car, the car that you're in. Let's say that car has a $50,000 underinsured motorist policy. That car might be like, yep, hurt real bad. Here's 20 more, 50 total. So 30 from here, 20 from here is 50. And then you in your red car, all the way over here, not part of the accident, has $100,000 in UIM coverage that doesn't stack. We can get 50 more from the red car policy. 30 from yellow or orange or whatever color that is. I mean, it's only been on this screen for more years than I've been doing this podcast. I've had this image. I should know what color it is by now, but that's not really important. So we got 30 from the orange car, 20 from the green car, 50 total. And then from the red car over here, boop, 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 another 50 for 100 total, assuming, of course, that the injuries are that bad. So that policy, fret not, follows you if you're in an accident where any of the vehicles that are involved that would potentially pay coverage have less than what they need. So simple concept, understand that vehicle policy, those protections that you take on, you carry them with you in most scenarios with most parts of that policy. Obviously not the property related stuff. So that's all I got for you. We're getting close to the first of the year. Take a look at those insurance policies. Feel free to contact me at info@bowerslawmd.com. We're also working on doing a specific website for the podcast. And when we have that up and running, that may be associated with the new podcast studio starting. When that is up and running, you'll be able to hop right on there and ask a question for the podcast that comes in telling me that this is somebody asking a question for the podcast. That way I know, talk about it generally, talk about it on the podcast. I will also reply to you individually from my lawyer account, not from my podcast account. That way, if you have a pressing question that you want the answer to immediately, you don't have to worry and wait till the next Monday or a future Monday if I've planned out episodes and guests to get the answer to your question. I will address that. Or if it's something that's a question for somebody else, I'll get you a referral pretty quickly. That's there. But right now, you just got to send the email and let me know that you have questions for the podcast so that I actually mentioned them here. Also, old podcast episodes, bowerslawmd.com. That's where you'll go for now. They're all there. You'll continue, even when we launch a podcast website specifically for the podcasts, you'll still be able to get that information from right there, as well as the new website. Should be searchable, should be able to find old topics and good stuff like that. So that's all I got for you this week. A little bit of a long one. My apologies. Until next week, this is your accident injury guy, Attorney Bowers, saying to be well and